Today I want to remind you, to bring you back onto the same page, about theories and important questions to ask as we begin to think about transition. Now, you probably remember a lot of this. This is going to be a quick refresher. The first of our theories that we lift up is about general systems. So what we want to do is differentiate between a mechanical system and an organic system. Think in your head about something that's mechanical. What are 3 things you can think of that are mechanical? From where I'm standing, I can see a variety of things. I can see an oven. I can see a lamp. I can see a camera. How do mechanical systems work? They have separate parts. The parts fit together in a specific way to make the machine run properly. And when there's a problem, you can take out a part and put in a new part, and the thing, in theory, runs as good as new. In contrast to a machine is an organism. It's also got parts, but it works differently. So you can think of an animal, or a plant, or a person, or a family, or a religious organization. With those things, there's not always a quick fix when something goes wrong. Although many organizations will try, they think that there is. They think mechanically. They want to take out a part and put in a new one and fix it. We'll start a new program. We'll take out the leader and get a new one. But that doesn't work that way, because that's not how in a system, all the parts of it work together and they all impact each other. In an organic system, we can't always even name what all the parts are, or what the relationship between them is, or the sequence of events that has created them into the shape that they now exist. An organic system is multidimensional. There are many different ways of understanding it. You can go like a hologram to the most basic system, and you can see the whole system through that. But each of us also, in a system can be seen from a variety of different ways, just like a person can be seen from a variety of different ways. An organic system can be nurtured, it can be managed, it grows when it's alive, but it's hard to fix it. And as transitional leaders, our job is really not to fix an organic system, but to help the system to manage itself in the best, healthiest way possible. An organic system is defined by its interconnectivity. Remember back to the readings that we did about the aspen forest, where things are connected under the surface. People are connected in systems in ways we don't always know, and that those relationships bubble to the surface at different times. Also, we exist in systems, and we belong to more than one system at a time. We don't just belong to a religious organization, we belong in a family, we belong in a neighborhood, we belong in clubs, we belong in racial groups, we belong in ethnic groups, we belong in age groups, all different kinds of ways of understanding ourselves. In an organic system, if you pull one part, it impacts all the others, if you think of pulling a spider web, because all of the parts have to react to being stretched in some way. We often try, as leaders coming into situations, to fix them, to try to figure out what made things a certain way. And sometimes that's important and can be helpful, but really what's important is to hold up a mirror to describe what we see about how the system is operating. And we do that, we hold up that mirror in order to help the people of the organization see themselves and figure out how to do the work they need to do. The last thing we remember about an organic system is that an organic system likes balance. It likes things to be the way it's familiar. And so it will go back to behaviors. Even if it learns, it looks like it's learning, it often will go back to behaviors that are familiar unless the system has really taken steps together, not just the leader telling it where to go, but it has taken steps together to really make a change. The second theory that we lift up is about family systems. Murray Bowen's family systems, seen also through the lens of Ed Friedman and Peter Steinke and others. And I just want to lift up three things about that. The first thing that we find is important in our work as transitional leaders is the issue of triangulation. Now, a triangle in and of itself is not a bad thing. In fact, it is what makes relationships stable, just the way it makes a stool stable. A stool can't stand on two legs. But we know that if two people have a problem and draw a third person in, that creates a problem. That stresses the third person, and it doesn't solve the relationship between those two people to begin with. It can sometimes be helpful, so it's not always bad, but a person who's triangulated is sucked in to a situation between two other people. We also talk about differentiation. Where do I stand and somebody else? Where do I stop and somebody else begin? And differentiation, we also talk in relation to this about being non-anxious presence, to being outside the system. I have always found it helpful to remember that Ed Friedman said, the people who are the most differentiated are only differentiated and non-anxious 70% of the time. The idea is to be the least anxious person in the room in order to be a leader, to know that you are the leader and to play that role and to not get sucked into triangles. The last thing that we lift up is about cutoff and fusion. If people are too close to each other, they become enmeshed with each other, they do what everybody else does, they run around like a herd, that's fusion. When people get angry in systems, they often cut off. They take their marbles and go home. They don't want to talk to whoever it is that they have a problem with. They would rather just go off in their corner. The object is to stay connected, but differentiated, not to get sucked into somebody else's stuff. The third theory that we lift up is William Bridges' theory of change and transition. Change itself is an event. It's situational. And because it's an event that happens, whenever a change happens, there's an ending of something. Today's a new day. Yesterday is gone forever. I may remember it, but it's a new day. A new baby is born. A new person walks into our congregation. Those are changes, and that means an ending of something. And when there's an ending of something, when the pastoral leader leaves, when somebody important dies, when COVID-19 hits and things are not the same as they used to be, there is grief involved, and grief lives itself out in different ways, and that will be impacted by how the individuals in the system experience grief. When there is a change, three helpful questions to ask are, what is lost? What remains? What is possible? After a change happens, it is likely people will move into a period of transition, or a system will move into a period of transition in order to come to grips with what this change is. This is a time of process. In order to come to grips with something is a process. It's psychological, and it can be very chaotic and unsettling for people. Bridges refers to this as the neutral zone, which is not to say we're in neutral and nothing is happening. It means it's a time, a liminal time, where many things can happen if people are brave enough to embrace them. And the last part of Bridges' theory is about transformation. If we can come through this transitional time, we may come out in a new state, with a new spiritual sense of the way the world is. Something new begins. Something has ended, something new begins. And it's important to remember that each of us comes to these things in different times, and so that can be complicated in a system. Some people will be there quickly, some may never get there. Some get stuck in the chaos. And every time something new gets added on, it creates the cycle over again. So those are our 3 theories. The last thing I want to lift up today is 3 questions, important questions to ask in a system. Those questions were developed by Alice Mann and Gail Rendell, and they make sense to ask of an organization in transition. Who are we? Who is our neighbor? And what are we called to do? So who are we is about our identity. Who do we say that we are? How do we describe ourselves? But it can also be important to know, who do other people say that we are? Who is our neighbor? Who are the people around us? Who are the people that we are called to serve? They may be across the world, our definition of neighbor. We may not even be seeing sometimes the people who are right around us, but who is our neighbor? And then what are we being called to do? What's our purpose in this time? What is God calling us to do? What is love calling us to do? Why are we on this corner at this time as a religious organization or as an organization in general? So who are we? Who is our neighbor? What are we called to do?